Good day, everyone. So for our report in Stylistic and Discourse Analysis, our group will discuss the concept of context and its role in understanding meaning in communication. So in language, words and sentences do not stand alone. Their meaning often depends on the situation, the surrounding words, and other factors that influence how a message is interpreted. So for my part of the report, we will focus on the two types of context, the linguistic context and extralingual context. So before we discuss the linguistic and extralingual context, let us first understand what context means. So context refers to the background or environment that shapes the meaning of words and messages. So in communication, words do not stand alone. Their meaning depends on the situation in which they are used. So context helps both speakers and listeners interpret communication accurately. Now, without context, misunderstandings can easily happen because many words and sentences have multiple meanings. So there are two types of context that we will focus on today, the linguistic context and extralingual context. Now, linguistic context deals with language itself, while extralingual context involves factors outside the language. Now, let us dive deeper into linguistic context. Now, linguistic context refers to meaning derived from the language surrounding a word or phrase. So this means we understand the meaning of a word based on the other words, grammar, and sentence structure around it. So it includes grammar, vocabulary, sentence structure, and overall text coherence. So in simple terms, it focuses only on textual clues. So for example, when we read a paragraph, we use surrounding sentences to clarify the meaning of unfamiliar or ambiguous words. So linguistic context helps us understand meaning based on language alone without needing outside information. So this is an example of linguistic context. Now, let us look at an example in this first sentence. So, she went to the bank to deposit money. So in this sentence, the word bank clearly means a financial institution because of the phrase deposit money. Now, for the second sentence, the children played near the bank of the river. So here, the word bank means the edge of the river. So the word bank is ambiguous because it has more than one meaning. However, the surrounding words in the text determine its meaning. So this is the power of linguistic context. The language itself gives us the clue. So now let's proceed to aspects of linguistic context. So linguistic context has several important aspects. First is deictic expressions. So these are words whose meaning depend on the speaker, time, and place. So examples include I, here, and tomorrow. For example, the word tomorrow changes meaning depending on when it is spoken. So second is cotext. Cotext refers to the words and sentences surrounding the word that clarify its meaning. So for example, in the phrase deposit money, the word deposit helps us understand that bank refers to a financial institution. Third is collocation. So this refers to words that naturally occur together. For example, we say strong coffee and make a decision. So these combinations sound natural because they are commonly used together. So collocations helps us understand meaning and recognize natural language patterns. Now let's proceed to extralingual context. Now, extralingual context refers to factors outside the text that affect meaning. Now, unlike linguistic context, this type does not rely only on words. It includes the physical setting, social roles, culture, emotions, and even body language. So meaning depends on real-life situations, shared knowledge, and the speaker's intention. So this type of context is very important in daily conversations because we often rely on tone, facial expressions, and situational clues to fully understand a meaning. This is an example of extralingual context. So let us examine this statement. It's cold here. So on the surface, it is just an observation about temperature. However, its meaning can change depending on the situation. It could simply be a neutral observation, it could be a request for someone to close the window, or it could be also be a complaint. So the interpretation depends on the tone of voice, environment, facial expression, and the speaker's intention. So this shows how extralingual context influences meaning beyond the words themselves. Next slide is linguistic context versus extralingual context. So on this slide, we compare linguistic context and extralingual context side by side so we can see their differences clearly. Now, linguistic context comes from the surrounding words in a text or conversation. So that is the meaning of a word or phrase depends on the other words around it. It focuses on language itself, including grammar, sentence structure, vocabulary, and how sentences are connected. Now, the main purpose of linguistic context is to clarify ambiguous words. For example, the word bank can mean a financial institution or the side of a river. The words around it, like deposit money or river, tell us exactly which meaning is intended. So essentially, linguistic context is all about understanding meaning from language alone without needing outside information. Now, the extralingual context comes from comes from outside the language. So it includes the situation, culture, or environment where communication takes place. Now, it focuses on real-life factors and social cues such as tone of voice, gestures, body language, cultural norms, and the relationship between speakers. Its main role is to help us understand the speaker's intention and implied meaning. For example, if someone says, "It's cold in here," the meaning could be a simple observation, a request to close the window, or even a complaint. The interpretation depends on the context outside the words themselves. Now, in short, the main difference is linguistic context meaning comes from language, while extralingual context meaning comes from situation and real-life factors. So, both types of context work together in communication. Words give clues, but the situation and social cues complete the meaning. So, to summarize it all, linguistic context focuses on meaning derived from language itself, while extralingual context focuses on meaning shaped by real-life situations and external factors. So both are essential for effective communication and accurate interpretation. That's all for my part. Thank you for listening.
Good day everyone, I am Regina Pahonar and I'm going to tackle about the topic micro level, macro level, and the mega context or level. In discourse analysis, text can be examined at different levels to better understand how meaning is created. Three important levels of analysis are the micro level, the macro level, and the mega context level. These levels help us understand language not only through words and sentences, but also through the larger social context in which communication happens. The micro level focuses on the smallest elements of language within a text. According to Norman Fairclough in the book Language and Power in the year 1989, microanalysis examines the formal properties of a text such as vocabulary, grammar, and the sentence structure. At this level, we look closely at the linguistic features used by the speaker or writer. These include vocabulary or word choice, grammar, sentence structure, sound patterns, and figures of speech. For example, consider the sentence presented. The CEO ordered immediate compliance. At the micro level, we can analyze how the word ordered shows authority and power. Another example is the children tiptoed through the silent hallway. Here, the words tiptoed and silent create a clear image and convey a quiet atmosphere. So through micro-level analysis, we understand how specific language choices influence meaning and tone. Now we're going to tackle the second level, which is the macro level, which focuses on the overall structure and main idea of a text. Instead of looking at individual words, it examines the general message or topic that the text communicates. According to Chun A. Van Dijk in Macrostructures in the year 1980, macrostructures refers to the global topic or main idea of discourse. At this level, we analyze the broader organization of a text, such as the theme, purpose, and type of discourse. Examples include text analyzed at the macro level include newspapers, articles, political speeches, short stories, and poems. So for instance, in the famous speech, I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King Jr., during the March on Washington in 1963, the macro-level message focuses on equality, freedom, and the end of racial discrimination. A line from the speech says, "I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal." At the macro level, this statement supports the main idea of racial equality and social justice. Now for the last level, we have mega context or the societal or ideological context. Mega context level refers to the larger social, cultural, historical, and political environment that influences a text. Again, Norman Fairclough explains in Language and Power that discourse is shaped by social structures and power relations. This means that language is often influenced by the society in which it is produced. At this level, we examine how factors such as history, politics, culture, and ideology affect the meaning of a text. We will use the same example for macro context, which is the speech I Have a Dream by Martin Luther King Jr., which can be understood more deeply when we consider its mega context. It was delivered during the American Civil Rights Movement, which is a time when African Americans were fighting against racial segregation and discrimination. Because of this social and historical context, the speech became a powerful symbol of the struggle for civil rights and equality. One example of texts influenced by mega context include wartime speeches, advertisements promoting luxury lifestyles, and feminist articles discussing gender equality. In summary, analyzing text through the micro, macro, and mega context levels help us understand language more deeply. The micro level focuses on the small linguistic details of a text such as vocabulary and grammar. The macro level examines the overall structure and main idea of the text, and the mega context level looks at the broader social and historical factors that influence meaning. By studying these three levels together, we can better understand how language communicates ideas, reflects society, and expresses power and ideology. That's all, and thank you for your time.
Now, let us proceed to expressiveness and emotiveness. But let us first talk about or discuss expressiveness. Expressiveness is the art of clearly showing meaning when you communicate. It's not just about emotions, it's about making sure your ideas, informations, or attitudes are understood by others. It goes beyond feelings. You can be expressive when explaining facts, giving instructions, or sharing opinions. It creates effective communication. Expressiveness means shaping your words, tone, and even body language so your message connects with the audience. It creates conscious efforts because it often requires thinking carefully about how you say something, not just what you say. It also connects with the audience. The goal is to make your message engaging and meaningful so people truly understand it. For example, a teacher explaining a science concept might use voice changes, gestures, and vivid examples to make the lesson more memorable. In expressiveness, it is about making your communication impactful so that people not only hear your message but also feel and understand it. It is the art of shaping the words, tone, and the delivery to connect with your audience. Now, the key elements of expressiveness. One is the language. Choosing precise words using figurative language like metaphors or similes and varying sentence structures to create rhythm and emphasis. The tone, matching the mood of your message. Formal for serious topics, informal for casual ones, humorous to entertain, and serious to show importance. Now, the delivery. In spoken communication, this means using voice modulation, pacing your speech, and adding body language to reinforce meaning. The purpose of expressiveness is about making an impact whether you want to inform, persuade, or evoke a specific responses. It ensures your message is not just understood but remembered. For example, a student delivering a speech about climate change might use strong language like urgent, crisis, a serious tone, and firm gestures to persuade the audience to take action. Now let us proceed to emotiveness. Emotiveness is all about the language of feelings. How we show emotions through words, tone, and expression. Unlike expressiveness, which can be carefully planned, emotiveness often reflects genuine emotions, even if they're expressed in a controlled or artistic way. It focuses on emotions. Emotiveness is specifically about showing feelings from the subtle hints to strong passion. Authenticity. It often feels real and heartfelt because it reflects genuine emotions. Connection. The goal is to make the audience feel something to spark empathy, joy, sadness, excitement, or concern. Impact. By creating an emotional response, emotiveness helps this message stay with the audience longer. For example, in a speech about community service, a student might share a heartfelt story about helping a hungry child. The sincerity in their voice and words creates an emotional connection, making the audience feel compassion and understand the importance of helping others. Now, emotiveness is achieved. So emotiveness focuses on making the audience feel something. So this can be done in several ways. Emotional words. Choosing the words that carry strong feelings like joyful, heartbreaking, or furious. These words immediately signal emotion to the listener or the reader. Imagery, painting vivid pictures with language. By describing scenes in detail, you help the audience imagine and emotionally connect with the situation. Then, personal stories, sharing real or relatable experiences that touch on universal emotions such as love, loss, fear, or hope. Stories make emotions more authentic and easier for others to empathize with. So, the aim of emotiveness is to create an emotional bond with the audience. When people feel something in response to your message, they are more likely to remember it and be influenced by it. For example, in a speech about disaster relief, a student might say, I saw families huddled together under broken roofs, their faces filled with fear and uncertainty. It was heartbreaking, but it reminded me of the power of hope when neighbors came together to help. So so the interplay of expressiveness and emotiveness. Expressiveness and emotiveness work best when combined because together they make communication both clear and moving. It enhances the impact. Expressiveness ensures your ideas are communicated effectively while emotiveness adds genuine emotion. When emotion is infused into expressive communication, the message becomes more engaging, memorable, and persuasive. It creates balance because expressiveness can be strategic, choosing words, tone, and delivery carefully, while emotiveness brings authenticity, showing real feelings. So the result, the audience not only understands the message but also feels it, which deepens the connection and strengthens the impact. For example, a student giving a speech about climate change might use expressiveness, like clear structure, strong language, confident delivery, and emotiveness, like sharing a heartfelt story about a family affected by flooding. Together, this makes the speech both informative and emotionally powerful. So, finding the right mix of expressiveness and emotiveness makes communication more effective, but the balance depends on the situation. Now, first, finding the balance. In some contexts, expressiveness should dominate. For example, a scientific report needs clarity, precision, and structures more than emotional appeal. In others, emotiveness takes the lead. For example, a love letter relies on heartfelt emotion to connect deeply with the reader. The key is adjusting the balance based on the purpose and audience of the communication. Second is subjectivity. Both expressiveness and emotiveness are partly subjective. What feels expressive or emotive to one person may not have the same effect on another. This means that communicators must be aware of their audience's perspective, cultural background, and personal sensitivities when crafting messages. Example, a motivational speech might sound inspiring and emotive to one listener, but overly dramatic to another. The speaker must gauge the audience and adjust accordingly. So, here we have an example of expressiveness and emotiveness. Expressiveness, like we have Mr. Smith was an extremely unpleasant. This is clear and strong wording shows dislike, right? And second is never will he go to that place again. It creates dramatic sentence structure, adds emphasis. Now third is in rush the soldiers. Word order creates urgency and action. It took us a very long time to forget. Its repetition highlights how long it felt. So these focus in style and impact, making the message vivid. Now let us proceed to emotiveness. Isn't she cute? Shows delight and affection. Fool that he was. Expresses frustrations or judgment. This goddamn window won't open. Open. Reveals anger and irritation. This quickie tool did not satisfy our curiosity. Communicates disappointment. So these focus on feelings, making the audience sense the emotion. So the difference between expressiveness and emotiveness is or are expressiveness is about style and impact. It's how you shape language to make ideas clear, vivid, and memorable. Example, never will he go to that place again. It is dramatic. It creates a dramatic structure to emphasize a point. Emotiveness, about feelings and authenticity. It's how you show emotion so the audience feels them too. Example, isn't she cute? Directly conveys delight and affection. So in short, expressiveness, it creates emphasis and delivery. It's all about that. So it makes the message stand out. For emotiveness, emotion and sincerity, making the audience feel. So it's all about emotions and feelings. That's all for my part, and thank you.
Now let's proceed. Language is not only used to give information. We also use language to show feelings, opinions, attitudes, and emotions. So for example, the sentence, "It is raining," it only gives information. But if we say it is pouring like the sky is crying, the message becomes more emotional and expressive, right? Writers and speakers use special techniques to make their message stronger, clearer, and more interesting. So these techniques are called stylistic devices and expressive means. So they make language more colorful, powerful, and meaningful. So they also help the audience understand the deeper meaning of a message. So what is stylistics? Stylistics is the study of a style in language. So it examines how people use words and sentences to create meaning and effect. So stylistic looks at the word choice, the vocabulary. Why did the writer choose this word and not the other word? Sentence structure or the syntax. Are their sentences short or long? Are the sentences short or long? Simple or complex? Sound and word. Do the words create rhythm or musical effect? And the last one is figures of speech. Are there metaphors, similes, or other devices? So stylistics helps us understand how language creates mood, like happy, sad, serious, or funny. how writers show emotions and attitudes, and how meaning can go beyond the literal meaning of words. So for example, if a writer uses short sentences, the text may feel serious or intense. And if a writer uses many descriptive words, the text may feel emotional or dramatic. And in simple terms, stylistic studies how language style affects meaning and feelings. So now, what are stylistic devices? Stylistic devices are tools that writers use to make writing more interesting, emotional, creative, powerful. And they are also called figures of speech. So these devices help writers explain ideas clearly, create strong mental pictures like imagery, and emphasize important ideas. And it also make the message more memorable. So without stylistic devices, writing may sound plain or boring. With these devices, writing becomes more alive and expressive. Now, what are expressive means? Expressive means are language features that show feelings, emotions, or emphasis. So they can appear in the voice, or the tone, stress, or the loudness of the voice. The word forms like mommy instead of mother. Strong emotional words like fantastic instead of good. And idioms like break a leg. Or the sentence patterns, we have also the repetition for emphasis. So important to remember that all stylistic devices are expressive means because they show emotion or emphasis. But not all expressive means are stylistic devices. Okay, so for example, raising your voice to show anger is expressive, but it is not stylistic device in writing. So we have common stylistic devices. So first is you have the imagery devices, which is these devices create pictures in the reader's mind and they help us imagine what is happening. First, the simile. What is it? A simile is a comparison between two different things using the words like or as. Example, the stars sparkling like diamonds. Why is this a simile? Because the sentence compares stars and diamonds. And diamonds are different things. The word like is used to compare them. So the comparison is based on the brightness and sparkle. The writer does not mean stars are real diamonds. The writer only says they shine like diamonds. So what to remember in simile is that if you see like or as comparing two different things is a simile. Now we have metaphor. A metaphor is a direct comparison between two different things without using like or as. Example, the stars were diamonds in the sky. Why is this a metaphor? The writer directly says stars were diamonds. There is no like or as. So stars are not really diamonds, but the writer compares them to show brightness. So the comparison is stronger because it directly connects the two ideas. So what to remember in metaphor is that if one thing is directly said to be another thing, like without like or as, it is a metaphor. Personification. Personification gives human qualities or action to non-human things. Like for example, the wind howled. Why is this personification? The wind is not a person. Howl is an action usually done by humans or animals. So the writer gives the wind a human-like action, and this makes the wind sound strong, loud, and maybe scary. So if a non-human thing is given a human action or feeling, it is personification. Now let's proceed to the sound and repetition devices. So these devices focus on sound, patterns, and repetition to create rhythm and emphasis. First, alliteration. What is alliteration? Alliteration is the repetition of the same consonant sound at the beginning of nearby words, like Peter Piper picked up pick of pickled peppers. Why is this alliteration? Because the words pattered, piper, picked, pick, pickled, peppers all start with P sound. The repeated sound creates rhythm and it makes the sentence catchy and memorable. So, what to remember is that if nearby words start with the same consonant sound, it is alliteration. On the other hand, is we have the assonance. Assonance is the repetition of the same vowel sound inside nearby words. So this repetition makes the sentence sound smooth and musical. So for example, go slow over the road. Why is this assonance? In this sentence, the long O vowel sound is repeated in the words go slow over and road. So even though the words start with different letters, they share the same vowel sound because the same vowel sound is repeated several times in nearby words. So it creates a musical rhythm in the sentence. So this repetition of vowel sounds is what makes it as an example of assonance. Now, anaphora. Anaphora is a repetition of a word or phrase at the beginning of sentences or clauses. Example is in a speech by Martin Luther King Jr., he repeated the phrase, I have a dream. So the phrase, I have a dream is repeated because it appears at the beginning of the several sentences and the repetition emphasizes the message. So this makes the speech powerful, emotional, and easy to remember. So it is this, what to remember in this part is if the same word or phrase is repeated at the beginning of lines or sentences, it is anaphora. We have now emphasis devices. So these devices highlight strong feelings or ideas. First, hyperbole. Hyperbole is an extreme exaggeration used for emphasis. For example, I'm so hungry, I could eat a horse. Why is this hyperbole? Because the person cannot really eat a horse. The statement is exaggerated. It shows very strong hunger. It is not meant to be taken literally. So, what to remember in hyperbole is that if the statement is clearly exaggerated and impossible, it is hyperbole. Now we have irony. What is it? What do you think? Irony is when the meaning of the words is opposite of the real situation. Like for example, saying, what a pleasant day during a storm. So why is this irony? Because the words say the day is pleasant. The reality is bad weather. The meaning is opposite of what is said. So irony often shows sarcasm, humor, or criticism. So what to remember in irony is that if the words mean the opposite of the actual situation, it is irony. So to summarize is that we always remember that simile uses like or as, metaphor or direct comparison, no like or as, personification is that human traits given to non-human things. Alliteration on the other hand is same beginning consonant sound. Assonance is we have repeated vowel sound, and anaphora is that we have repeated beginning word or phrase. And the hyperbole is the extreme exaggeration, and irony is opposite meaning from reality.
So hello everyone. Stylistic frameworks are different ways or methods used to study how language is used in text. They help people understand the style of both literary texts like stories and poems and non-literary texts like speeches or articles. These frameworks combine linguistics, also known as the study of language, and literary criticism, also known as the study of literature. They help explain how language can create meaning, feelings, and artistic effects in writing. So stylistics studies things like word choice, sentence structure, figures of speech, and tone. These elements show how a writer uses language to express ideas and emotions. Moving on, literary stylistic focuses on how writers use language creatively in literature. It studies how authors make their stories or poems more powerful and Interesting. So attributional stylistics studies patterns and language to identify an author's unique writing style. It can help determine who wrote a certain text. So overall, stylistic frameworks help us understand how the form of language or how it is written works with its function or its purpose or meaning. This slide explains functional stylistic studies how language works in communication. It looks at how writers choose words and sentence structures to express their meaning clearly. So this approach is based on M.A.K. Holliday and this theory called systemic functional linguistics. This theory explains that language is used to perform different functions in communication. The first function is the ideational function. It is used to express ideas, thoughts, and experiences about the world. The second function is the interpersonal function. So it shows the writer's feelings, opinions, or attitudes and how they connect with the audience. And so the third function is the textual function. It helps organize words and sentences so the message becomes clear, connected, and easy to understand. So in simple terms, functional stylistic explains how language is used to share ideas, show feelings, and organize message in communication. And now this slide highlights affective stylistic studies, how language and writing style make readers feel emotions. It explains how a text can make readers feel happy, sad, excited, or surprised. So it looks at language features like word choice, sentence structure, imagery, and sound patterns. These elements help create emotional effects in the reader. This approach focuses on the interaction between the text and the reader. It means that the reader's feelings and reactions are important in understanding the text. The idea of affective stylistics was developed by scholars such as I.A. Richards, Stanley Fish, and Wolfgang Iser. In this approach, meaning and emotions develop while readers in reading the text. Different readers may feel or understand the text in different ways. And now, this slide explains pragmatic stylistics, studies how meaning in language depends on context and style. It combines pragmatics, how meaning changes depending on the situation, and stylistics, meaning how language is used in text. So it explains that the meaning of words is not only in the text, but also in the situation, the speaker, and the listener. Also includes social relationships, intentions, and the setting can change how message is understood. So pragmatic stylistic looks at features like implicature, meaning that it suggests but not directly said. Next is presupposition, meaning information that the speaker assumes is already known. Next is speech acts, or actions done through words like requesting, promising, or apologizing. So it also focuses on interaction between the author, the text, and the reader. This means that the reader understands the message by considering both the language used and the situation where it is used. So first, we have describe, meaning identify the stylistic device used in the text. This means finding the language features in the text such as metaphors, repetition, imagery, or special word choices. Next is classify, also known as determine the type of device. This means grouping the device into a category like figurative language, sound device, or sentence structure. Next is interpret, also known as explaining the effect or function. So this means explaining what the device does in the text, such as creating emotion, emphasizes, or a clear picture in the reader's mind. Next is to connect, show how it helps achieve the text a purpose. This means explaining how the device supports the message or goal of the text, like persuading, informing, or entertaining the readers. Next is contextualizing. So it also known as explain how it fits within the stylistic frameworks. So this means understanding how the device relates to the overall style and connect of the text, including the author, audience, and situation. Alright, and so to summarize it all, stylistic analysis studies how language is used in a text. It looks at things like sentence structure, also known as syntax, meaning of words or semantics, and writing style, also known as stylistics. So it helps readers notice different stylistic devices such as metaphors, repetition, or special word choices. It also helps them understand different ways of analyzing a text. So, by learning this skill, readers can understand text better, enjoy literature more, and express their ideas more clearly. Thank you so much and good day.